Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Terri if you're new here, and today we are going to be talking about technology and its effect on spiritual warfare. So when I started making this video, the first thing I wanted to talk about was spiritual warfare. I, growing up, have experienced spiritual warfare, and I have read through some of these, but I have always been extremely interested in the battle in the mind. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. I have As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, Change Your Words, Change Your Life, The Battle of the Mind by Joyce Myers, and The Power of Your Words. But as I started writing and diving into these thoughts, I could see that it was taking a different path. And so I really want to talk about technology and discussing how technology increases the spiritual warfare that we see in the world. I am not saying technology is bad. Clearly I'm using it, okay, to get out a message. I'm not saying it's bad at all. But what I'm saying is if we can understand why we have an increase in spiritual warfare, because there is an increase within our world. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into it. We know that the mind is a battlefield, okay, and the enemy, evil, is attacking our minds every day, and we either get stronger than those attacks or we have to fight them. One of the biggest things to realize is that the enemy is indeed attacking our mind. This is his first and primary battlefield, is our mind. Now, once an individual graduates from this battlefield, the attacks often get bigger, or they come from outside sources, people, or circumstances. Meaning, if the enemy can't get you to think negatively about yourself or a situation, he's going to use another person to be negative towards you. We all experience negative attacks, and sometimes the attacks win and we get stuck in negative thinking. We also all have different weaknesses within our flesh. So some people struggle with some sins, while other people, the sins that you would struggle with, the next person, your neighbor, does not struggle with those sins. So just like some people have certain gifts, we all have specific weaknesses as well. The enemy knows your weaknesses just as much as God knows your strengths, and God knows your weaknesses just as much as the enemy knows your strength. So the battle is greater now than ever. And you can hear this in the news with people saying over and over again, we're in unprecedented times. The last time I watched the news, they just kept repeating that phrase over and over again. We're in unprecedented times. Now, perhaps there's a spiritual reasoning for this, yes, but I assure you there's a logical one as well. Yes, I do believe 100% that this is true, that the spiritual attacks are on the rise, but I also think that individuals' minds have more access to being attacked more than ever. I have a unique perspective on this because I was born in 1990, and so I was on the cusp of the generation that grew up without cell phones and that grew up without technology, but I also grew up with technology and as it was advancing to the point that we're at today. Therefore, I have a unique perspective of understanding the benefits of technology, but also observing its effect on the world, the brain, and the spirit. Technology has essentially given us the chance to become more like God, all-knowing. We know what's going on in the world because we all have access to it. Before, that was not a capability that people would have. So many of us are becoming like God in knowingness and access to his power, but our spirits are being left behind. What do I mean by that? Our spiritual maturity often is not aligned with the tools and access that we have to knowledge. For example, it's easy to get fearful when watching the news, and therefore the enemy has won because he has us in a state of fear. If we don't have faith in God for our own circumstances that we're living in, so if we don't have the faith in God for our own circumstances that we're in, it's unhealthy for us to observe beyond our scope of control when we don't even have a faith for our own circumstances. Let God worry about the world. He is God. I'm going to say that again. Let God worry about the world. He is God. Unless you're going to do something about it, pray on it. Now, I used to get upset about people burying their heads in the sand about all these things that are going on in the world. But if you mentally can't handle it because there's nothing you can really do about it, and if you're not going to dedicate yourself towards prayer or doing something about it, then the best thing to do is to create more positive within the world you're in, because that is what is in your control. The spirit is probably the most controversial and least openly discussed topic in our culture. One day, as technology continues to increase, we'll look back and study the effects on the brain, how it's affected our culture, and analyzing the effects on the spirit. However, as an individual, we have a personal responsibility to observe how technology is affecting our walk with God. So let's go back to the spiritual component of things. Our brains have access to more influence than previously seen in past generations. By having access to the internet, TikTok, Instagram, and even gaming are all ways that increase our mind's way of being attacked, or gives us more opportunities for the mind to overcome these attacks. Let me give you an example and also clarify the simplicity of what I mean by the word attack, because I'm using an aggressive verbiage to describe something that's fairly simple and simplistic in nature. Okay, so for example, you go on TikTok and all of a sudden you're swiping through videos and a medium or perhaps a tarot reading pops up, and you listen to it. I'm speaking from experience. You listen to this tarot reading, okay? This is an attack from the enemy, because occult literally means hidden knowledge. So if somebody is sharing a message and they're tapping into information that's not meant to be shared using forces that aren't good, you can see that we have a problem. Now, that ability to share the message has increased with the tools and platforms that we have. For me, logically, the next question would be for the person watching, like let's say somebody's watching right now and they're not a Christian. For me, logically, the next question would be, well, how do you define what's good and what's bad? Okay? And as much as I want to get into that topic, because I started writing a whole thing on it, focus on the point of this video, which has to do with technology and how it's increasing spiritual warfare within the individual and the collective at large. So I understand that we do not all agree. I understand that some people watching this might not agree that we're operating by the same rule book, okay, meaning the Bible, or even there's differences. For example, if you're not Catholic and you're watching this video, we both believe in Christ, but that doesn't mean we have the same exact rule book that we're operating by. And I'm going to use the rule book that I believe. So I have a few verses here. Leviticus 26. I know, a Catholic reading their Bible. What? Is that a thing? It's a thing. Leviticus 26. To be fair, I grew up Baptist. If a person turns to mediums and sorcerers, whoring after them, I will set my face against the person and will cut him off among us people. Leviticus 19:31. Do not turn to mediums or sorcerers. Do not seek them out, so make yourselves unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. So the temptation of the occult is real, because the occult literally means hidden knowledge. And this goes back to the first sins in the Garden of Eden, when Eve eats from the fruit of forbidden knowledge, because there's more ways for our mind, for women's mind, men and children, to have access to things that affect your mind. The occult is just one example of this. Other examples are judging others, having hatred towards others, envy, pride, coveting somebody else's things. The point I'm trying to make is that technology increases spiritual warfare.